Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Wherever you are, welcome again to another episode on Talk Architecture Podcast. We're continuing the series on job burnout for an architect and designer, and this is part two of that series where we're focusing on three things: job burnout, risk factors, consequences of job burnout, and handling job burnout. If you hadn't listened to part one, I would recommend for you to listen to that first before you listen to this one. And here is an interesting article from the State of Burnout in Architecture 2021 that was recently published on August 31st, 2023 by Rebecca Hay. And they found out that from surveying 2 to 5 architects to better understand the current state of burnout in architecture. Of course, the issues were at that time the coronavirus pandemic. But that didn't cause burnout for architects, but it made it worse for 90% of the respondents. Nearly all architects, 96.9%, experienced burnout in 2021. Like I said, the coronavirus pandemic was around at that time. But despite that, architects that responded explained that in the summary of their key findings in the modograph.com blog that I mentioned earlier. Working overtime is the leading cause of burnout for architects. No surprise there. Efficient workflow and processes can alleviate burnout in architecture. So working efficiently, and how do you make that efficiency happen? A paid mental health day would assist with reducing burnout. Flexible working options and mental health days are things employers need to look into improving burnout. Support and recognition from leaders would combat burnout. And also the problem is burnout impacts creativity and the quality of work. According to the architects who felt that bad behaviors were more often rewarded than good ones, mental and physical health was impacted due to burnout. Another article that mentioned about burnout for an architect is also issues that I've mentioned earlier in part one, where somebody feel isolated at work and also even at home. So this isolation and unable to communicate, problems within the architecture studio team in a workplace environment. The suggestion is to not do anything alone and be coachable. So for those junior architects, there are those who takes instructions and part of a team, although you may also be someone who has to report to your supervisor or your director or associate. You can still be coachable, even though you've had many years of experience. So here, don't do anything alone, be coachable. Feelings of burnout can often be caused by either your frustration with if you were the associate, there is maybe frustration with the younger and inexperienced staff, or your own frustration and their frustration with you, or work-related reasons. To avoid this, adapt a culture of and commitment to coaching. Be intentional about investing in the up-and-coming architects and engineers. This is just one suggestion based on our previous discussion in part one, which I quickly want to put forward in this part two episode, so that we understand about the importance of coaching. And that is never to be underestimated. Going back to the Mayo Clinic.org article that is available in the link in this episode, We again go back to continuing about job burnout, risk factors, consequences of job burnout, and handling job burnout. We can go back to specific issues in the architecture context or the architecture practice context. So with job burnout risk factors, these are the following factors that may contribute to job burnout. You have a heavy workload and work long hours, which is common to architecture practice. You struggle with work-life balance. You work in you're working in a profession that is having to do a lot with having to care other people. Not so much in architecture, because architecture care about the client, so that is less in architecture practice. You feel you have little or no control over your work. So that was repeated again. This is repeated to actually underline those important points that we have suggested earlier when we discussed in part 1. And it is not, shall we say, a surprise to find heavy workload and work long hours as one of the issues. I do chat with some employers, and they do mention about, well, my staff would finish by 7 o'clock, but sometimes they would do an overnighter because of the deadlines. Just say tomorrow is deadline, which is a very common thing that many employers practice with their staff. So sometimes they would give that staff member a chance to recover a day after submission, or half a day to recuperate. But is this something that is commonly practiced in that company? Is it something that is often the norm, that happens frequently, say every couple of weeks? If that is one other thing. So if it's one-off, like maybe once a month or once in 2 months, it would be acceptable in a way. But if it's very frequently, every fortnightly or every week, then this is a problem. There's really a problem underneath all that, which is not enough staff, or some problems of management, or something that is not communicated well. Like the other article mentioning about efficient workflow and processes, which could reduce having to work long hours. So it's always a lot of a chicken and egg, or things that are related to each other when it comes to this discussion about job burnout for architects. The struggle with the work-life balance is something that, if you dedicated your life to architecture, you are expected to have a spouse that would appreciate you not being with them during dinner, or in times, many hours on end, and depending on their jobs, really. So having a work-life balance is something that the architect profession should strive for the members or people who are doing architecture. Why can't we have a good work-life balance in our architecture profession? And we know the benefits of that. We don't even want to go into other statistics of breakups and divorce rates for architects. I mean, our profession has to be like this. Yes, we are the one that is serving the client, but there could be some reasonableness. Remember, just now I was listing or reading out some of the recommendations about support and recognition from the leaders of to do with architecture to combat burnout, and flexible working options and mental health days. Actually, some feedback on how employees feel, or what are the issues in depth that could be taken care of by the employer or the senior staff members, to get them to be feel a sense of balance, a sense of work-life balance there. That is one of the some of the goals that we need to have happen in the architecture profession. So back to the other risk factors, such as you have little or no control over your work. Having little or no control over the work is always has to do with, it's a one-way street when it comes to doing your work, rather than a two-way communication between you and your supervisor, vice versa. The supervisor being frustrated with the employee doing work that not up to standard or expected, such as what we discussed in part 1. So in return, the employee also may not understand the expectations and not able to have control over the schedule, just being given by the boss, which is quite common, very common, in fact, in architecture practice. The supervisor would come to the employee and say, we gotta have to do this by tomorrow, or you gotta have it done by the end of the week. And so, on top of the job that the employee is doing, which also has another deadline, so they have 3 jobs that they're doing at the same time. And if you are me, and I am you, and many of us around, multitasking for jobs is not easy at all. I mean, multitasking, is something that's mundane, like cooking, or even cooking, but things to do like sending your kids to school, or something that is a pattern that you already know what to do, is different than multitasking, something that you need a lot of thinking and a lot of working out, and it can make you kind of frustrated because you can't have that control that you really want to. Could projects be one at a time, and could it be very well thought of by the supervisor or the boss when they give a project to an employee, meaning that, okay, at what stage are you in? Are you if you are at the end stage or at site, maybe I can give you this project. Do you think you can work it out 2-3 hours a day? I mean, that sort of conversation, rather than just bringing it up and saying you got to finish it by the end of the week, no matter what sort of scenario. So there has to be a two-way communication going on that could pave to a better relationship. The consequences of job burnout. Ignored or unaddressed job burnout can have significant consequences, including excessive stress, fatigue, insomnia, sadness, anger, or irritability, alcohol or substance abuse or misuse, heart disease, high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, vulnerability to illnesses. Yes, I can vouch for some of these problems that arise from job burnout. Not understanding the expectations, one thing, and being concerned about getting promotion or feel hard done by. A lot of things that create that are miscommunicated, or not being able to address some of these issues by the employees gets you to having these consequences of job burnout. And what I've mentioned earlier about heavy workload, working long hours, struggling with work-life balance, general unhappiness, general dissatisfaction, little or no control of your work. So these are the risks, and this consequently will result in what I've mentioned just now: stress, fatigue, insomnia, sadness, anger, irritability, and so on. I mentioned about heart disease and all that. So we come to the conclusion of handling job burnout. At least this reflects with what I mentioned earlier in the monograph. Handling job burnout. Try to take action to get started with number 1, evaluate your options. Discuss specific concerns with your supervisor. Maybe you can work together to change expectations or reach compromises or solutions. Try to set goals for what must get done and what can wait. Surely there need to be some reasonable discussion on, rather than at the end of the week or tomorrow, maybe it's next week. It's always an issue with regard to deadlines. And you have this amount of staff and work is coming in, then you look at the staff, surely that staff can deal with this extra project. Never mind, I will help that person. And you have a million things to do too. So eventually that person get a bit dumbfounded, irritable, and not able to, have control over that. And it's a common thing where managing when it comes to you managing other people, we really need to sit down and work it out together, something very reasonable, and set out what you can do properly, day by day, hour by hour, literally, and getting an agreement, and so that the employee could actually have some control over the schedule and appointments. So we've all been in that place where we just second guess or think it's okay, but we haven't really communicated that well. Let's learn from this. Handling job burnout, number 2, seek support. Whether you reach out to coworkers, friends, or loved ones, support and collaboration might help you cope. If you have access to an employee assistance program, take advantage of relevant services. It's great if some companies have the assistance program, but in smaller companies or medium-sized companies, the support is within the office or within family and friends. And that means that you can meet your friends and your family and have some sort of a work-life balance, hence having the support. So there's a lot of chicken and egg, a lot of connected issues here. Number 3, try a relaxing activity. Explore programs that can help with stress, such as yoga, meditation, or Tai Chi. In actual fact, if you break down if you get support from your employers during the day, okay, you want a place to meditate, or you want to go out for a break in between working hard, or you're stressed out and you actually practice some sort of meditation or some sort of technique on how to be calm, and deep breathing techniques or something which could make you able to get a hold of your body sensation, actually understand what your emotions are. These things could happen in the day-to-day, and it's not necessarily your supervisor, it could be your client or other consultants. There are practices that are susceptible which could help alleviate and de-stress yourself in the day-to-day work. But great if there is a space and place and time for other, like things such as yoga and meditation. Get some exercises. When we talk about relaxing activity and get some exercises, the employer need to actually adopt practices to allow places where employees can do that. You've got to trust your employee in the sense that, okay, you get a space for them to do exercises. And if they hang around a little bit more than they should, how would you actually react to that? Would you feel like, oh my God, this person is wasting my time and money? That's the problem with investing on human beings, because if you have that sort of attitude, then you're not investing, you're just using human beings. Okay, I'm telling it straight, because investing means this person is working for you and that they needed this break and you got to trust them. And if you have a good relationship with them, they would communicate with you their issues. It's not, I mean, I've been in an architecture company, obviously, and I've had feelings that if I were to do something that I think I need to do, my supervisor, my boss would think that I'm wasting the company's money or something like that. But I should not feel that way, because I'm just trying to recuperate from something, or I need time out. And if I need time out more than an hour or something like that, I need to inform that I'll be out, because the reason why I inform myself that I'll be out for a while is because I'm working in a team and my team members need to know that I need to take a break. Now, if everybody could be professional about what they do and be open about it and be respectful to each other, then the work environment could be better. So, yeah, getting some exercise, like regular physical activity, can help you to better deal with stress. Also, take your mind off work. Can't really be thinking of work all the time. You need to take your mind off it. Communing with nature or being out and about in parks or recreational spaces, if the area that you work has some of that, and it'll be good for your soul. Get some sleep. Sleep restores well-being and helps protect your health. That's another one to handle job burnout. Don't underestimate the importance of sleep, and good enough sleep so that it'll help you in the long run as well in terms of your health. Mindfulness. Mindfulness is the act of focusing on your breath flow and being intensely aware of what you're sensing and feeling at every moment without interpretation or judgment. As I was mentioning about being mindful with to yourself and also within your work team and in the office. In a job setting, this practice involves facing situations with openness and patience and without judgment. Yeah, got to trust each other and not have judgment. So keep an open mind as you consider the options. Try not to let a demanding or unrewarding job undermine your health. Yeah, thinking about unrewarding or demanding job. A job could be, you want to be true to yourself, and you want to be true and proper doing a job, and there's a lot to be done, and there's evaluation at the end of the day. And that's where the demand is. The demanding part is that there's an evaluation, and you need to rise to your expectations, especially in bigger companies. And unrewarding means that what you do is not rewarded, obviously. And this all could combine together to undermine your health. As someone who has been there before, you can become cynical. This is the situation. There's a situation in a toxic work environment. the circle or cycle of unhappiness, up and down. There's some celebrating small gains and wins is important thing to do, and it shouldn't be done in a cynical way or in an unhonest way, not honest. And the subtlety of all this can be felt throughout if you are stuck in a job situation where you were being unjustly perceived. There's miscommunication, and at the end of the day, the leader should step in and sort out this unhappiness. So, too bad that sometimes at the end of the day, when the person can't stand it anymore, they just leave, or they left in a bad way. And human relationships actually born from work environments such as this. Everyone has their goals and dreams, and these places are the place where you could achieve those goals and dreams, or a stepping stone to that. So to be congenial and to be able to work together and not be misconstrued in any way, much of it could be alleviated by an intervention by the leaders. So if the leaders or the directors, associates, and bosses are not able to support their staff properly, that's what's going to happen. Why must this be an architecture culture or a club mentality? The club mentality could be good because we discussed that in an earlier episode, helping out each other. But the club mentality where you have to be in a certain way is inflexible, where you have to be in a certain way to be in the culture of it, a certain way that you dress, or certain mannerism, or certain, not a troublemaker or something, or which no one actually want to be a troublemaker. They just want to be able to express themselves or be heard, actually. Who wants to be like alone in the workplace environment? There's many ways to be alone in the workplace environment. Even if you're a senior person in a company. So, yeah, that, I think one of the biggest issues is being alone. If at one point you're not alone and there was a lot of camaraderie and stuff, but then suddenly, because miscommunication and some issues, you are alone and then you left. So actually the work environment could be such a very sustaining and provide for your soul enriching experience, but it could also be very toxic and very negative. So all in all, I wish you luck, whoever you are. And if you have any problems, I could relate to them. And please do join in my program, the Architects Council, formerly known as Rediscover Your Sense of Self program for the architect. So I would like to be you, the Architects Council, and it's a very good program if you're especially in your situation where you find yourself being stressed and having burnout symptoms. Thank you very much for listening to this 2-part series. This is the second part, and that's the end of it. Till we meet again.